What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Jimmy James 59, and well, it's been a little bit of time, maybe a week or so since I've put up a video, but I've just completed my move to my new place and other life events. So the TLDR is that we are back and we're going to have a lot of videos coming out. So definitely make sure that you hit that subscribe button on the channel. We are so close to 400 subscribers right now. Boom, let's just knock it out and then let's see, right, how fast we can knock it out, get to 500, right? We are in turbo mode on the channel right now, so let's do this thing. Now today's video, right? Today's video is about, well, a unique unit here. Well, in a way it's unique and in a way it's not so unique because it's actually very similar to another unit in the game. So Hindustanis are a civilization that has been, I think, one of the most talked about over the, well, really ever since the Dynasties of India expansion came out, actually. And the reason that Hindustanis, which were formerly known as the Indians, right, and have now been reworked as a civilization, the reason they got so much attention, or at least one of the main reasons, is they received a new unique unit, and that is the Gulam. The Gulam is a unique unit that plays a really important role for the Hindustanis because it deals with one of their most important deficiencies, right? Hindustanis have always had a weakness against archers because they lack the night line entirely, right? It's very difficult for them to deal with archers historically. You can play elite skirmishers, right? But, you know, that's a trash unit and it can be really easily countered by knights and even infantry in the late game, right? Champions just wreck the skirmisher line, so it can be a real problem. The only other real option was to play heavy cavalry archers. Those can be really tricky in Castle Age. They don't really become, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, they really don't become an effective option against, say, the crossbow line until you get into Imperial Age, and really only if you have all of your upgrades. So the Gulam of the Hindustanis is an anti-archer unit, as we see, you know, a little bit of fighting going on here. The Gulam really helps the Hindustanis have an anti-archer unit. Okay, now let's take a look here. Actually, I want to zoom in here. Before I get into that, right, quick tip if you don't know, putting a house on the hunt unit that is coming in, if you think you're going to lose your unit, right, if you build a house on it, that will de-aggravate the unit, or de-aggro the unit, as some people shorten it, and then you can walk away a little bit, hit it again, and not lose your villager. Quick tip. Now, back to Gulam. So, the Gulam is very similar to the Huskarl, that is the unique unit of the Goths. It's not quite as good in melee combat, though in Castle Age it's actually not the worst against other infantry, especially Eagle Warriors. And it's a little bit faster, right? So it's kind of a hybrid between an Eagle Warrior and a Huskarl, actually. Probably the best way to think about it. Even kind of moves like an Eagle Warrior. So when you're playing as Hindustanis, you're probably going to want to get to this unit in Castle Age when you're up against an archer civilization, especially one of the all-time great archer civilizations in the Britons. And so the question is how you get there. And so I'm going to give you some options, and I'm also going to tell you about how you want to deny a Hindustani player from getting there, right? Because we want to think about both sides of the equation here. And really what you have is two options when you're thinking about your Dark Age and planning your opening, right? So you see a little bit of a attack going on, not that big of a deal though. You really have two options. You can either play a little bit more aggressively and try to play with tempo and control the map, keep your opponent at their base so that you can wall, right? Or you can make a big commitment to walling up yourself and playing an extremely defensive playstyle. And the shenanigans going on here. you can play an extremely defensive playstyle, right? I think that both options are viable. Here, I am playing a more aggressive playstyle, and you can see we're going to go 20 pop men-at-arms here, right? Hindustanis have a great eco bonus, and I'm just trying to take advantage of that, getting up early, right? And I really want to keep my opponent at his base. You can see my opponent's going for 21 pop men-at-arms. We both have pretty nice builds here with not that much idle time, so pretty efficient. So we're both playing pretty efficiently so far in the game, right? Now, seeing the flags in that barracks was really good for me because I know that he has men-at-arms, right? And so he's not going to really, at least early on, out-archer me. He's Britain, so he has faster working ranges. He'll get there eventually, but I'm getting my range up, and he's starting to get his range up now. And now I'm just going around looking for damage. Now, let's switch to the Britain player here. As the Britain player, right, knowing what the Hindustani player wants to do, right, get walled up, get on stone, it puts you as the Britain player, or I think of the archer player in general, I think you really want to do damage. Not great micro that fight, but it's okay. I think you really want to do damage, and so those men-at-arms taking that fight against the units, on the one hand, you might say, yeah, they win the fight, but really it's more of a trade. There's only half of a men-at-arms remaining, and he could have been pressuring me and keeping me from being, from getting walled up. So I think that's a little bit of a mistake there. Now we see this unit forward, and from here, right, as the Hindustani player, you know, you want to think about the map, you want to get walled up, and you know you're probably going to be up against archers, so, right? You want to think about getting fletching early, and also I think going for at least adding in some skirmishers. You could go all skirmishers, but definitely mixing some in with your archers. Again, it just depends on, I think, how aggressively you want to play this matchup, right? I am personally, right, instead of just going purely one-range skirmishers and just sitting behind my walls, I think that that gets too easily punished by an opponent going forward with things like towers, and we do have a forward stone here. It's kind of protected, right? You know, we have a range here so we can harass potential villagers that are trying to build on this area, but it's still forward, so it's still something that needs to be defended. I think it could be much too easily punished. I don't like that idea. So I want to actually see what we can do to harass the opponent and get walled up. Now our opponent is taking a very, very defensive style here. Now, as I've said, that's something in general that I think I disagree with. I think recognizing when you're up against Hindustanis, the kind of units they have, I think you need to know that as the game goes on, it becomes kind of difficult. I talked about this in my last build order, doing a Huns 21 pop men-at-arms, and I'd say definitely check out that video, and also check out another guy's channel. His name is Iron Kaiser. He does a lot of great Age of Empires 2 stuff. He is another one of these, he's got a good mid-elo channel, and he actually did a build order video on that build order, and so highly encourage that you check out Kaiser's channel. It's really good. But now I talked in that video because that was a game that featured a matchup against the Gujaras, and understanding what your win conditions are. And if you're the Britons, right, in this matchup, I think that you definitely have some win conditions in Castle Age if you can get there, but you want to think about that you really have a good advantage here in the Feudal Age, right? And so I think you want to take advantage of it because you have the faster working ranges, so you can really outmass your opponent. And we actually see this here, right? Our opponent is using those ranges. He's on 2 ranges. He's got us outmassed. We took a fight here because we knew he didn't have fletching just yet, but now we're backing up, and the sheer numbers make that hard to deal with. Britons are a tough civilization to deal with, folks. But what have we done, right? We're trading units out front, but we're walled up. And you can see, right, we're going to try and get these sides walled up here. We're going to try and get those sides walled up there. And honestly, we're just committed to getting up to the next stage. A little bit of idle time here, under a minute, so we're not doing that bad. But the pressure we've put on, we've idled our opponents, right? We've idled our opponent's eco. Now, I'll tell you that as you get better at the game and you're up against better players, you're going to be able to idle your opponents a lot less. I'm just letting you know. But hey, this is an intermediate level of gameplay, right? This is kind of the mid 1300 level, and so this is where we're at here. Now, notice our opponent chilling at home. It's good that our opponent's here, and on the one hand, you might congratulate our opponent for, being on the scene and preventing us from getting some damage in. But again, I think you really need to think about your win condition. Losing these units is not a big deal for us at the moment, right? We can go ahead, we can keep creating more, and we're getting walled up here, right? That's what you want to think about. We have a good, healthy number of villagers on stone. As a Hindustani player, right, I think, getting to about 6 or 7 on stone is not bad. And you can keep your gold numbers a bit light here. We're only on 1 range, and we're really not planning on making a ton of crossbows later in the game anyways. So we've already got more than enough gold here. So now, right, our opponent is finally going forward. We're nearly at minute 20. He's dealt with the armies outside of his base, and now he's going forward, and we are up to the next age, right? About a minute of idle time, not bad. And, well, we're getting our walls up, right? As I think we lose this villager here. Sad. Very sad, right? Definitely a misplay. Again, you're not watching perfect gameplay here, right? Intermediate kind of gameplay, and that was probably a bad decision. Now, you can see, right, just to try and be safe, we're investing a little bit more to skirmishers, getting some armor. There are so many archers on the field. It just seemed like at the time the right kind of thing to do, and I don't think it's the worst play because you got to think about the cost structure of Gulams. They're not a very food-intensive unit, so we can go ahead. We're not going to slow ourselves that much, and we're getting this armor. Now, I'll say this. Another nice thing about going for Gulams just in general is that, if you had men-at-arms, they're probably dead by now, and so you're not going to show your opponent, since you won't have any infantry, you're not going to accidentally show your opponent that you're going for the unit. Now, as the archer player, you're probably expecting it because, well, Hindustanis don't have a lot of other things they can do. And so I think that's one of the things that, to me, makes Hindustanis a little bit less dangerous than Gurjaras, is that going for Gulams in Castle Age is kind of predictable, and it's something that you kind of know they're going to go for it because, you can make more skirmishers, but that's going to be so limiting on you. So now what we're doing, right, we're going to go ahead and get this castle up. As the Britain player, right, who is on the way up to Castle Age, what do you think the Britain player should do here? At this point, again, are there win conditions for the Britain player here? I think that there are, right? I think your win condition here is you really want to get to a knight crossbow composition in Castle Age, right? It's true that Britain's missed bloodlines, but otherwise you get some pretty decent knights, and while that's important, you can't just let your opponent go full into Gulam here. I just don't think that's a viable move, and even though the Hindustanis have good camels, I mean, maybe some of the best camels in the game, they're really, you need to get to another unit, right? Because you have all these crossbows, but Gulams hard counter them. And as you can see, the Gulams are coming out, right? You can see the stats on these guys: 5 pierce armor. They're pretty speedy, right? They got some jets on them, and we're getting some of the attack upgrades. So we're really investing into these guys. And our opponent right now isn't going for that. He's actually taking more of an eco approach, and so he's going to keep making archers and kind of just leave that army. Gonna see if he can defend mainly with archers. So a little bit of a risk there, but let's see how it pans out, right? As we see the scout come in. By this time, he's absolutely sure that we're on Gulam because he's seen them. We're going to go ahead, right? We're going to go ahead and see if we can go forward, right? Now, Gulam fared decently well against infantry in Castle Age, pretty poorly against infantry in Imperial Age. You could go long swords here. The Hindustani player can go with their own long swords. They're going to be, at least in Castle Age, just as good. And the problem winds up becoming one, I think, of mobility. Gulam just have they're so quick that actually going knights here for the Britain player, I think is a really smart move. And you can see our Britain player does have the resources to do it. A lot of food, a lot of gold, but he's staying on crossbow. Now, as the Gulam player, right, you recognize that, and you can see we've already built a stable just in case, because we're trying to predict what he's going to do, and we're kind of expecting the knight switch. But one of the things that we can see here, right, we see another range. And actually, now we know that if he's going 3 ranges, he can only have maybe 1 stable in the back. So that's really good for us, and so we don't need to really invest in another stable, and we're getting our stone together as well. And what we're trying to do here, right, take map control. And you can see that's exactly what we're going to try and do here with this castle. Deny this gold, even deny these ranges, make it very difficult for our opponent to push out. Now, you can see we're moving to the back of his base. There's a good reason for that. We want to put this castle up. So what we're trying to do, he has a very slow army. We have a much faster army. We want to pull him around and pull his attention to this area, right? This is a feint. We have no hope of getting in here. We don't want to get in here. He's actually probably worried us about going in on this side, right? Because he can't really wall there. And now, boom, we're swinging back over to this side because we do want to protect these villagers. After all, we're dealing with Britain range here. That is something that you want to think about. Now he's going to bring this army all the way back, right? Looking back on it, probably should have committed more villagers to this castle to make sure it gets up, given the range of the Britons. But that's why, right, we're going to go in here and we're going to try and do this damage here. He actually deletes a wall because he wants to come out here, but this is why we have the Gulam, right? So let's take a look at how these bad boys fight here, right? 38 crossbows. Let's see what happens. Look at the pass-through damage. We've gone from 38 to 28 crossbows in an instant. Now we have the castle up. This is in a matter of seconds, folks, right? In a matter of seconds, right? We have the castle up, and now our opponent, right, has no army. That's how fast it happens with the Gulam. This is a really good unit. It is going to allegedly get a little bit of a nerf in August, reducing some HP, but it's still going to be very, very good against archers because of its high pierce armor. So don't mistake on that front. Now, right? Now we have 2 production buildings, so we're cranking these guys out, and we're really getting after it here. And we're going through, we're killing vills. You know, we have a little bit of idle TC time there, and our opponent just decides to call it, and that's it. That ends the game, right? So, actually, let's go back to the map for a moment. So, what are the takeaways from this game? We've showcased the power of Gulam. Here's what I want you to take away from this game, though. And this isn't a slight at my opponent, because again, in every game, we probably make about 1 billion mistakes, right? But you want to think about the mistakes that your opponents make and actually think about whether or not, you know, you play just really well or you kind of just caught your opponent not being ready for the strategy. And I think that this game is actually more of that. What I really want you to take away from this game is that I think that there actually are win conditions against your opponent going full Gulam, right, in Castle Age, right? I think you need to be ready to make that switch to that counter unit. 1v1 play in Age of Empires is all about thinking about counterplay, thinking about how you can win fights, and, you know, counter units are a way to do that. You want to think about what your opponent's going for. I don't think our opponent was ready for that. I think he thought that, you know, he could go eco-protect himself. He realizes at the very end what he needed, right? And so he was just a little slow to react, and by the time he did react, it was just too late because we had the unit to counter his unit, right? And that was the Hindustani player. If this game goes onward, right, making camels is probably the play. And so we're going to deal with a combination of Gulam and camels, which I think it's really interesting. Gulam camel versus knight crossbow. I'd be interested if anybody has experienced that kind of battle, right, in Age of Empires 2. How does it play out? My instinct, actually, I think that knight crossbow should fare pretty decently because knights are so good against Gulam on the front line, and the crossbows should be able to pick off the camels as they come in, especially with a civilization like Britain's that has extra range. Even though the knights don't have bloodlines, I still think that might still be a favorable matchup for an archer player in that position, and certainly should be a decent matchup even with some other archer civs that, you know, get access to bloodlines with their archers as well. So I think that you have options to deal with it, but we can see from this game what happens when your opponent's just a little bit slower to make that transition. And against a unit like the Gulam, when you're playing archers, the margin for error is very, very, very thin. And so that's exactly what happened in this game. And we can just take a look here, right? Show you the statistics, right? Again, this wasn't, and I'll say this too, this wasn't a fast-paced game. Neither one of us played particularly quick or anything, right? It was very different. You can kind of see that in the APM, right? It's actually a very slow-paced game, which is how we wanted to play it in this particular matchup. You can see, right? Just take a look at the score, right? The military, right? Nice military lead. Remember, early on, we did not have a big military lead. We traded off a lot of units and never really had a big army. But we had the right army, and that's what's important here. More resources collected. Hindustanis have a really, really nice economy. A bit of a Ville lead. Just getting up to the next stage, doing all that. Boom. You know, seeing how that goes. So, right, going back to the map here. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that in showing you how powerful the Gulam is with the Hindustanis, right, how you can use it, I hope you also have a really good idea of the Gulam's weaknesses and that you can kind of extrapolate that from this video as well, seeing those opportunities. With that being said, I'm Jimmy James 59. I'll have another video coming out later on in the next week, right? Gonna get back to making some tier lists, so definitely, right, if you haven't already, follow the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, definitely give it a like. Let me know what you think, what kind of thoughts spring to mind. But with that being said, Jimmy James 59, and I will see you all out there on the ladder. Peace.